Hello and welcome to our Prevent Connect Campus web conference titled Community Colleges, Opportunities for Sexual and Domestic Violence Prevention. Prevent Connect is a national program of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, sponsored by U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The views and information provided in this web conference do not necessarily represent the official views of the U.S. government, CDC, or CalCASA. Today we're going to be discussing not only the common challenges that community college campuses face in their prevention efforts, but also the really special and unique opportunities that exist. And so as I mentioned earlier, we're joined by three guests who will share their firsthand experiences on doing prevention work on community college campuses. I'm really excited to hear from them. We have Jason Zaleski, Stephanie Jimenez, and Valara Villanueva who are joining us today, and we'll be hearing from each of them in just a few minutes. So like I've said on numerous Prevent Connect campus web conferences, this is really just the beginning of the conversation. I feel like as a field, there's been a lack of focus on community college campuses. And so hopefully today we'll be able to start conversations that we can continue as we move forward. Personally, I spent a lot of time on a community college campus, 8 years to be exact. And so I really believe that community colleges are a gem for the community. Not only are they an essential link between high school and four-year schools, but these schools are really an integral part of communities in which they reside. They're seen as a community resource. Many people attending community colleges are from that community, and so, there's a possibility, a likelihood that they'll stay in that community. And community colleges can really serve as a cultural center as well as a primary post-secondary education and training resource in a community. All of these facets of community college can offer us new ways to think about prevention on campus as we seek to create safe and equitable communities and campuses for all of our students. So in addition to community colleges being gems, we know that community colleges really stand distinct from four-year schools and that their needs vary. And our guests are going to provide more insight into these distinctions, but I wanted to open with this because while distinct from four-year schools, they're still required to meet the federal mandates that a four-year school is required to meet. And so the question really becomes, how do we do this, right? And so it's imperative to understand the mission and culture of the community college that you're working with. I did a very informal survey of about a dozen community college campus mission statements. And what I found was there were themes around equity, diversity, support for students, and the importance of community connection and involvement. So as we plan for prevention strategies and efforts on community college campuses, it can be useful to keep the school's mission in mind. Knowing what is important and valuable to the school can be helpful as we strategize around buy-in, relationship building, and ultimately our prevention efforts. So one major difference between community colleges and four-year schools is that the student body on a community college campus is always changing. So maybe the focus should be on what stays constant. As we hear from our guests today, I think it would be great for us to start thinking about focusing on what stays the same. So what is institutionalized? What networks and systems exist where we can embed prevention efforts? How can we saturate the campus and decision makers through training, policy, protocol, practices, or programs? Who can we collaborate with? Again, what are the things that already exist? What opportunities exist in order for community colleges to not only meet federal mandates, but to go beyond compliance and really engage in culture change? What are the routine things that happen on campus where we can embed prevention conversations, strategies, and efforts? How can we start small and build momentum on what we already have going on? So with all of those questions spinning around us, I would now like to pass the podium to our first guest and introduce you all to Jason Zaleski. Jason is the Dean of Students at Mount Wachusett Community College, and Jason is also the Massachusetts State Director for NASPA, the leading association for student affairs professionals. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Good. How is everybody doing? Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
And I think we're going to start my thoughts with a question for the audience, which takes a look at how long folks have been doing prevention efforts on their campus. So if you could answer the question that you should see up on the screen: how long have you been engaged in prevention efforts on your campus? A, less than 1 year; B, 1 to 2 years; C, 2 to 4 years; or D, more than 5 years. And if you could answer, actually, there's a box that you can click on the lower left-hand corner, and we'll start to see that poll being generated. But it looks like there are quite a number of folks on the call that have been doing this work for less than 1 year on your campus. And so that's wonderful news to hear, because a lot of what we will be sharing today, I think, will be very helpful as you begin to create and fine-tune the programming that you have started with. And certainly there's a wealth of experience on the call as well. So with that, one of the things that we wanted to launch into, go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, I was just going to say, Jason, it's great to see such a range of experiences. Like you said, there is a majority of folks who have been doing this for less than a year. And I was just wondering if you would give us a brief rundown of kind of the history of this work, because we know that it's been going on long before we started having these conversations about campus sexual assault.
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that I wanted to share just very briefly, and this is obviously an oversimplification and a generalization of the history of sexual violence, domestic violence prevention, and activism, but I wanted to provide that context. And I think it's important just to pay attention to a couple of things. One, certainly the intersectionality of these issues with race, class, gender, and we're certainly seeing those intersections playing themselves out in our culture today in terms of what is happening and still happening in our country. The other thing I think we want to make note of is that for college campuses, or at least in respect to college campuses, this work is between 30 and 40 years old. And when we talk about that context, we're really talking about larger institutions. And as we sort of transition into the community college world, I think we're finding across the country, and this is certainly true in the New England region where I'm working, that many community colleges here are just getting started doing sexual violence and domestic violence prevention. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I also think it's important for us to look at these topics from a multicultural lens and how we're going to involve our communities of color, men and women, as agents of systemic change. We have to look at gender roles, gender inequality, racial injustice, and how we advocate for male peer support when we start doing this work on our campus. And then lastly, I just wanted to pay attention to what I have on the slide as the quote-unquote fourth wave, which is really where many of us sit today, or at least on the cusp of maybe a fifth wave. And what I think really dominates this discussion is this issue of compliance. And I certainly am thankful for and appreciate all of the recent legislative initiatives and the strong political positioning that has happened over the last decade. And this has been extremely helpful at raising cultural consciousness on these issues. But it's also a cause for concern. And I'll say that sexual violence prevention, domestic violence prevention, can't just be about compliance. It can't be about checking boxes and providing mandatory training. For me and for many of us, this is about creating a campus community that fosters mutual respect and social justice while trying to create a culture of caring and ethical behavior. So we want to go beyond compliance, and compliance may be the entering wedge that helps you have this conversation, particularly with upper leadership on your campus, but it can't be the only reason why we're doing this work, and it's not enough to sustain the work on a day-to-day basis with our campus and our stakeholders. So that's just a brief context as we get started.
Thanks, Jason. It's really important that we look back at where we started and continue having those critical conversations about where we're going. So I'm wondering if you would talk a little bit about what makes community colleges so unique.
Sure, and I see on the call that we have some folks representing traditional four-year colleges as well as community colleges. So for some of us on the call, this is going to be the world that we live in. But I think it's important, as Ashley highlighted earlier, to recognize that community colleges are gems, and those of us who work in community colleges understand how mission-driven our work is. but also that we are distinct from the four-year traditional campus. And I think one of the challenges that all of us in community colleges have faced to this point is that there really is a lack of programming available to us that really speaks about our students and to our students, as much of this work has really been dedicated to four-year and four-year residential institutions. So we're trying to really pay attention to what makes the community college distinct. So if we look at that landscape a little bit, I think what we see is a mixture of non-traditional and traditional populations. At my institution, our average age is 27, and that is going up, not down for us. And that's a fluid population. So, and that fluidity is not just with open access, but we have guest students, students that are arriving on our campus throughout the academic year. They have strong ties with our local community. They tend to be our neighbors. They tend to have strong connections with our campus. Our campus has been, our community college campus has often been a beacon for them throughout their childhood and early adult life. We have strong partnerships with community agencies, and I'm thankful to see all of the folks who represent community agencies that we partner very closely with on the call today. We also, community colleges tend to have strong high school partnerships. We have community involvement and presence on our campus. And we're also serving a diverse and disparate set of student needs. And I think that can make our programming, our outreach and prevention efforts initially feel very daunting. But I think it really requires us to be innovative in our thinking. Many of us also do not have extensive experience doing this work. And I want to mention as we get started that the work that I'm going to talk about here at Mount Wachusett Community College is only 3 years old. So we talk about this work in higher ed being only 30 to 40 years old, even shorter on community colleges. The work that I'm going to talk with you about today is only 3 years old and constitutes a very recent commitment on our campus to pay very close attention to who our students are and how we can create sexual violence prevention programming that speaks directly to their life experiences. So we're learning every day. This is new territory for us. We're certainly learning how to best deliver empowering prevention training, education, and our outreach programming. So just very briefly, this is Mount Wachusett Community College at a glance. All of us are different. One of the things that makes community colleges certainly unique is that we are all very different in terms of scope and size, but this will just give you a sense of who we are. And I want to highlight one of the bullets, which I think is a particular challenge, and that is the size of a student services staff and the types of resources that we often find on community college campuses. My training in higher education, I've been working in the field for 22 years and only the last 3 years at a community college. All of my other experience has been at private and public four-year residential programs. So my training in sexual violence prevention and all violence prevention has been in those types of institutions. So I brought that work with me and that experience with me to the community college, and when I arrived at Mount Wachusett 3 years ago, I was really surprised to find that as an institution, there was no systemic programming on these initiatives. We weren't even in a compliance stage when I arrived 3 years ago. So coming from an institution where we were doing lots of programming and spending lots of resources, both human and financial, on violence prevention efforts, I was surprised to find that we were not doing that here at a community college. And when I reached out to my new colleagues in the community college world, found that that was not unusual. So part of our efforts at Mount Wachusett have been designed on our campus, but we've also, as a consortium throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, have been looking to do this work together.
Great. Well, thank you so much for putting this all in context for us. You know, in so many conversations that I've had with prevention practitioners working on campuses, the conversation often leads to a discussion around the importance of institutional leadership. And so as the Dean of Students for Mount Wachusett, I'd love to hear your perspective on opportunities, challenges, and best practices for engaging in prevention efforts on community college campuses. If you would share that with us, Jason, I think that would be great to hear.
Sure, absolutely. So with that, we want to talk about the opportunities that I think community colleges have in doing this work. And as Ashley mentioned in her opening, much of what is going to make your programming successful is going to come when you focus on what is already institutionalized and in the strengths that you have as a community college and as an institution. And what we did here at Mount Wachusett is to really play upon those strengths. And the first and foremost is our strong community partnerships and presence in the service area. We immediately partnered with our Rape Crisis Center, Pathways for Change in Worcester County. We connected with a lot of service agencies, including our high schools and after-school programs, to begin to do this work, not just on our college campus, but to reach out into the community and see how we could be helpful and how we could connect with agencies that were really excited about being invited to come into our community and share not only their resources, but their knowledge and expertise, whether that was with direct student programming or training our staff. We also, as a beacon of outreach efforts in a resource-limited area like ours, we began to sort of reframe how we were going to look at this. And I mentioned that this is not about compliance or should be about more than compliance. We consider ourselves here at Mount Wachusett as doing work as a thought leader on violence prevention in our community. So as we approach the programming and the intervention and the outreach work that we're doing, we're imagining ourselves as bringing and educating our entire community on these particular issues. We're also, as an institution, strong in terms of our grant development and innovative programming. So we began to focus efforts on how we could raise resources and dollars to pay attention to this work. And we have diversity in our staff and faculty and certainly our students, and we wanted to use this diversity to our benefit. And to make sure that our prevention efforts recognize who our population reflects and all of the stakeholders and constituents that we wanted to impact with our programming. Community college students are always changing, and initially we looked at that as a significant challenge. But how we reframed that challenge was to really focus on changing our campus culture and climate. And when you do that, you impact your students, no matter for how long they intersect with your institution. So rather than trying to only do in-person programming, we really looked at cultural change and climate change as a way to impact who we are as an institution and the types of messages that we want to send to our students. So in thinking about some of those challenges, and I'm sure that these challenges are true for lots of folks on the call who are working on college campuses and on community college campuses, we had to take a look at some real challenges. And certainly one of those challenges was that we had a high-risk and vulnerable population. When we began our work and we did some climate survey work and we reached out to talk with our students about these particular issues, we immediately received feedback from our students that trauma was a common occurrence with our student population. There were students that were living in unsafe situations, students who had survived sexual violence, domestic violence, violence in the home, students that were living in shelters, students who were housing and food insecure. And so we knew that we had to develop our programming from a trauma-informed perspective. And that was really helpful because one of our initial sort of reactions to doing this work was that, well, we are not a residential campus, so where is this work relevant? And what we immediately found out was that this was an incredibly relevant topic for our students. And we are not, when we're not dealing with just traditional age students, we wanted our programming to reflect not just what we commonly see in four-year residential student programming. We really wanted to reflect programming that asked our students to be better neighbors, to be better parents, to be better grandparents, to be better community members and friends, to be better leaders in whatever aspect of their life they were participating in. We also had an issue around mandatory orientation sessions and how we were going to get this message out to students. So what we did is we created a virtual orientation. So for our working students, for students who are online only, we have a robust virtual orientation that includes our violence prevention efforts built in, as well as videos of our staff and students talking about the messages that we feel are important about who we are as a community and the types of initiatives that around violence prevention that are important for us. We also had to define who were our students. Our students can be anyone from a student taking a non-credit class to students who are full-time here seeking a certificate or degree. We made the decision to define students as all students who intersect with our community. They get some type of messaging and programming from us, and that was important for us. We also took a look at our strategic priority, and I think Ashley mentioned this earlier, that it's so important for us when we're developing this programming to institutionalize that programming at the highest levels. And we looked at it from three perspectives. One, we needed a system-wide buy-in, and that's where I think compliance can be helpful, at least as that entering wedge to begin the conversation with your president, with your senior leadership and administrators, to talk with them about the importance of being in compliance, at least in terms of making this an important agenda in your strategic mission. And then second, you need to have the infrastructure, and third, you need to have the staff. And I know that that can be challenging, and here at Mount Wachusett, we only had two folks within student services that had a higher education background. So we had to spend the first 6 months, and I think this is really important, building up our internal resources and spending time educating and training our staff to be prepared to do the type of programming that we were aspiring to do on our campus. So I would say one of the significant challenges is to understand that you can't start educating and training your students until your staff is well trained and comfortable talking about sexual and domestic violence prevention. Some additional challenges I mentioned our student history of trauma, the financial resources of our students, and of our own student affairs budget is always a concern. We also have a broad spectrum of student experiences, and when we first started looking at programming in the marketplace, most of that programming, even the interactive programming, would talk about case studies and scenarios that included fraternity parties, bars, and house parties or residence hall parties, and that's certainly not the experience of our students. So we knew that we had to design programming that would fit the reality of who our students are, so it would be authentic to them and really tailored to them. So we looked at, once we were able to sort of identify that, we looked at the delivery of content and our messages, and we started to develop a communication plan. So what happens here at Mount Wachusett is I, as the Dean of Students, reach out to students a number of times throughout the semester, inviting them to programming, but also embedding those messages, both written and short videos that we do out of my office, inviting them to our programming, but giving them messages about what type of community we are, how we support our students, what additional resources are available to them on our campus and in our community, and designing materials and programs that are geared towards our non-traditional diverse student population. And again, paying attention to the intersectionality of these issues with respect to race, class, gender, and educational attainment. So I'm going to wrap up with just some best practices and things that we've learned here at Mount Wachusett that we hope that you will consider as you are developing or starting your programming. One is to really focus on blended orientation programs. If you don't have a mandatory orientation program, I highly suggest that you consider doing that. What we have started to do here at Mount Wachusett is to break that programming up into smaller sections. So we do programming for our non-traditional student population. We do a large mandatory orientation, and violence prevention is a significant part of that half-a-day orientation. We do our virtual orientation programming, and then we do programming for some of our vulnerable populations, and that includes our dual-enrolled high school students. It includes some of our students who have indicated to us that they're coming to us with some history of trauma and are concerned that our programming may be triggering. So we do some very specific targeted outreach to those students to try to, again, have a trauma-informed approach and welcome them onto our campus in an appropriate way. We also are doing a lot of family, guardian, and support service educational opportunities, particularly for our dual-enrolled underage students. So we would invite those folks to come and spend some time with us, review our violence prevention programs and education. And whenever we do our programming, we're not only inviting our students, but we're inviting our community and all of the stakeholders, families, support network, young kids when appropriate, to try to make this programming really about our entire community, not just about our students. And we're doing intentional year-long programming, and we branded and marketed that as an anti-violence or violence prevention curriculum. So we have asked all of our student life staff and all of our programmers to really pay attention to this topic. So when they're programming throughout the year, they're paying attention to violence prevention as a theme. And when they come up with a film for a movie series, or when they're doing curriculum infusion work like our faculty are starting to do, we brand that with our MWCC Cares anti-violence curriculum label or marketing tool, so that students can see that there's a thread that connects all of the work that we're trying to do here, and that we are violence prevention is our mission in a lot of different ways. We're doing bystander training on our campus, and we reimagined that again to fit our population's perspective. We're not a traditional institution in terms of who our students are, so we've designed a bystander training that's reflective of that tries to get our students to step up, to speak out, and to address issues of language, of culture, of obviously overt violence. But this is our opportunity to create sort of a non-traditional bystander model, which again I'm happy to share with any folks out there that are looking to do something similar on their campus. And this is controversial, but our programming is population level, and it is mandatory, which means all of our incoming students participate in a minimal amount of violence prevention programming. There are lots of different programs out there. At Mount Wachusett, we do use the EverFi Haven program. They have just created a Haven program for non-traditional students, and our campus was instrumental at working with the EverFi folks to create that module. Based on our feedback that their existing module was very traditional age student and four-year residential campus focused. So we were able to sort of work with them to create a module that speaks to our non-traditional population. You need to have easily accessible online resources. Again, goes beyond compliance, so obviously it's important that our students know who our Title IX staff are and how to report incidents and who our responsible employees are. But sometimes our students aren't on campus very much, or they're not on your main campus, and your compliance staff are located on only one campus. So it's important that that information is visible, and whenever possible, connect photos with that information so that students can try to personalize or humanize who those folks are because they may never be able to meet you in person, or they may not be meeting you in person until they're in crisis. So it helps to really connect students to that information. We're working on curriculum infusion and getting our faculty to work violence prevention efforts into their curriculum in terms of the materials they're choosing, the assignments and essays that they are giving our students, and that is a very new initiative that we're excited about. We use passive programming, so not all of our students can attend our active programs. So we have posters in the hallway. We do empty place at the table programs to recognize Domestic Violence Awareness Week. Our students are seeing this information, whether it's on bulletin boards, in the classroom, outside the classroom, or with demonstrations in our cafeteria and other high traffic areas where we're posing these questions. We've had film series, we've had poster series, we've had art projects, and we've had student design contests to try to raise awareness on these issues. And then lastly, we have worked on a dialogue project. So we have a project on our campus called Difficult Dialogues, and this essentially is a program that helps teach our community how to be in dialogue with one another around issues that we tend as humans to walk away from or to lean away from. So we have spent the last 2 years with a dialogue initiative around anti-violence curriculum, as well as how to talk about race and power and privilege and gender in the intersection of all of those things. And we've been able to create a community that has begun to talk about violence prevention, sexual assault, domestic violence in very open and frank and safe ways. And that has begun to inform the type of programming that we're doing on campus. And again, as I wrap up, I'm happy to share any of these initiatives with folks. And I want to end by saying that one of the most important things that we've done from a leadership perspective is have a policy that mirrors our serious commitment to violence prevention. If your policy does not match your prevention initiatives, students will know that. So on our campus, we welcome all of our students with a promise that this is a safe, welcoming, and inclusive community. And when students feel unsafe or there's an incident of violence on campus, our policies work quickly so that our students can maintain and come back to a safe community. And I think that's an important piece as we read every day stories of how campuses address violence and how they sanction students who have been found responsible for violence, that if you're serious about these prevention efforts, you also need to deal with incidents on your campus in a very serious, frank, and timely fashion. So with that, I will wrap up and turn it over to my colleagues, and thank you for joining the call today.
Thanks so much, Jason. This is really great information, and I mean, the work that you're doing at Mount Wachusett is really inspiring. There are many questions, so I want to be sure that we leave time for our other guests. So I don't know, Jason, if you want to go over to that chat box and look at some of the questions that were coming through. A lot of them were about sharing resources. So we will figure out the best way to get those out to folks.
Sure. Sure, and as the training continues, the workshop continues, I'll start to answer some of those questions for folks in the chat box.
Wonderful, thank you. So I really want to hear from our audience. We haven't heard from you all in a few minutes. So I'm curious who here has attended a community college? Maybe that was part of your educational trajectory. And so if you would answer on the left, I've put up a box. And so folks are answering, and right now it's pretty evenly split. I'm sharing the results, so you should all see that. But it's almost half of folks have attended a community college. And so my follow-up question then is, what were the things that helped you feel connected, or the flip side to that is disconnected, to the community college campus that you spent time on? And so if you would let us know in the chat box, that would be wonderful. And while those answers start to roll in, I am actually going to introduce our next guest, and that is Stephanie Jimenez. So Stephanie, I'm giving you the podium, And Stephanie is the program coordinator for Butte Community College's Safe Place and Wellness program. So Stephanie, before you share about your successes and challenges with prevention on your campus, I think it would be really great for our audience to hear a little bit about your campus and how the program came to be. So I guess I should also say, how are you, Stephanie? How are you today?
I'm really nervous. Look at all these great people and all of the vast experiences. And so I'm feeling a little nervous. So I just want to put that out there. Other than that, I'm doing great. And I feel honored to be in the presence of all of these really rad folks that are doing some great work out there. So I just want to acknowledge that as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. We're happy to have you.
So Butte College, I'll just give you a little lowdown, is that I have been out here as a coordinator since 2008. We came out on a Department of Justice Consortium project grant with Butte College and Chico State. It was a collaborative grant, and it was a 3-year grant cycle. And in that created this really sustainable infrastructure with that grant money. And what it created was safe places on both campuses. So our offices, respectively, are still running and have been institutionalized by each campus. And in that, we've created a coordinated community response team. That includes our local Rape Crisis Center, Catalyst, our local Domestic Violence Center. We have MOUs with our law enforcement on campus and off campus, and some MOUs with our district attorneys and some of our judges even in the community. And so with that, that established a pathway for Safe Place to advocate for students. So there we go. Oh, did we go backwards?
I think you're going backwards. There you go.
There I am. Thank you. So what you're seeing right now are just some statistics from Safe Place itself. So Butte College is located in Northern California. It's considered a rural community. We're about 2 hours north of Sacramento, and our campus demographics are really diverse. We're considered a commuter campus. That is, our main campus is on a site that is over 900 acres, and we have 2 other sites, Chico and Glenn County. And our main campus is 20 minutes in either direction from anything. So that's problematic for sustaining any kind of community culture on campus. That's been one of our bigger hurdles. And we don't have any student housing at all. Our campus does extensive international recruiting to Japan, Korea, Africa, Saudi Arabia, and Russia, which creates this really rich and diverse campus population. And with that warrants a really creative solution for prevention and response, crisis response, to meet the needs of all of our students. So with that, you can see that we have a pretty high population of female students that access services in my office. When we first started many years ago, the male population, male self-identified population that accessed services was only 2%. So because of our programming and our inclusiveness, we've begun to see men begin to come into our office and seek services, whether as allies or seeking crisis intervention, which has been really, really great to see. Our typical age is 18 to 26 is about a little over 50%. And then that other huge population is 53 to 61 is the age population that we work closely with in our office. So that's kind of just the breakdown. We have mostly see intimate partner violence in our office, and then we see some sexual assault. But the difference, I think, here might be the disconnect of intimate partner violence and sexual assault being co-occurring in relationships. So we began to really educate the students that those two can co-occur in a relationship. And I think since then, we've seen a rise of students identifying being sexually assaulted in relationships. I think that's a big distinction that's changed our stats too. So why do I keep going the other direction?
let me get you back. There you go.
Okay, get me back on track. So Safe Place, again, after the 3-year grant became institutionalized, the campus picked this up. This mission statement was created by our Campus and Community Advisory Board, And this was previous to the inclusion of the wellness component that we have now branched out into. And so our mission is under revision. I want to reflect the wraparound services that we now provide. The links that you see, the first link is for our homepage, and that link is pretty comprehensive, and it talks about all the trainings we do, how to report, all the resources. And then what we wanted to do when we were redoing our policies and procedures was to have a comprehensive site that if you were an ally, if maybe you were the accused, that you could also seek services. And so the secondary link is just that comprehensive site where we hyperlink all of our policies and procedures, the definitions of the crimes, all resources on campus and off. So those are the things that are happening in our office. Ashley, can you go ahead and just bump me through to the next slide? Thank you. So our funding history, we had a 2008 consortium grant with OVW that lasted 3 years. It really was able to sustain and create some really great resources and infrastructure that have been able to be maintained and are still in place. One of those things is we created a law enforcement victim advocate community response team. And that team is still meeting every other month where we case students and clients in a non-descriptive way, and of course with release of information from our students. But we case these teams, and we continue to work with our community as a whole. What we began to see when we began to do this is that we were seeing this really high increase of Ativan use and Ambien use for sexual assaults. And so what that allowed us to do, excuse me, as from the health clinic standpoint, is begin to really monitor that. So that was one of the really great resources that comes from having such a collaboration as we began to see these patterns that were happening in our community as a whole. So really grateful for that. In 2014, we were awarded a really great mental health grant, and that grant allowed funding for us as a campus to be trained in applied suicide intervention strategies, which is the ASSIST program. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but it's fabulous. And in that, we funded Chico State to also have some suicide trainers, and we did a 3-day suicide intervention training. And this is where we've added the wellness component to Safe Place. And through that funding, we created a peer educator program that is running really strong, and those peers are also trained in suicide intervention, domestic violence, and sexual assault. So, and that, again, that funding allowed us to begin to do some stigma reduction through outreach, education, some campus campaigns, and work closely with our behavioral health agencies within the community. So, and then fully institutionalized in 2014, which has been really great. Our campus really began to take ownership of that. And, within all of that, we have had some spotlight on us too. In 2012, I was working with a female student that filed a complaint against, that reported being victimized by another student, that she had been sexually assaulted. And in that process, our campus had never had a student file a formal complaint. And part of that is because, and Jason talked about it a little bit earlier, with Title IX, many campuses, and ours was one of them, did not identify the fact that they were responsible for students when they were off campus as well. So there was not this inclusion of if something's going on, if something's happened, if it's student on student, we have a responsibility campus culture. And so the minute that those things began to happen and we began to have those conversations, students started coming forward. And with that, we had the student filed a complaint with OCR for mishandling of a sexual assault case. And in 2014, we ended up on the list of OCR's list, which I believe now is well over 100. It's no longer the list of 55. We are currently still under investigation. We have not heard back from OCR. So without any kind of guidelines, we began to do kind of an internal response. And in that response, we began updating our policies and procedures. We changed our model from 1 Title IX investigator to 3 Title IX investigators. We used Atixia to have our investigators trained and certified through them. We began a mandatory campus-wide trainings for faculty and staff. We did a campus climate survey, and I'm more than happy to share the results of those. And then we reinvigorated our peer educator program with that as well. And we did, like I said, we used EverFi for our campus climate survey, and we are using EverFi. I know Jason talked about EverFi too, as our online model to do some of our orientation training as well with that.
Hey, thanks for giving us kind of that history of how the campus response came to be, Stephanie. I think it would be wonderful if you would share what kind of things you do now on campus briefly, and then I'd love to get to some of the challenges that you're still facing.
Yes, absolutely. So currently our office does all of the crisis response to intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and stalking. So our office is open Monday through Friday. We are what we call an open door policy, so you don't need to make an appointment to access services. And in that, we have our Stonewall Alliance LGBTQ folks in our office on Tuesday and Thursday, so they are here working with students. We utilize Chico State MSW interns to see students as well, so we supervise them. And we collaborate with the community partners. I do all the restraining orders. We do all the court advocating. And our peer educators do in-class education. So every semester I have faculty coming forward and asking during Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month and Sexual Assault if we would come in and do an hour-and-a-half class presentation and education to their students. And our office goes out to the communications department and asks them if we can come in to the class and provide some training to their communication students and work with them closely. And so we have found that to be really helpful because those communication students will create debate. We have a debate team, and so sometimes we'll have conversations and dialogues in regards to intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and stalking. And we also do what we call a Tough Talk Tuesday, where we roundtable some conversations that are very uncomfortable or we don't normally have. So that's what our office does, and we are mobile, so I go out to our other sites too. And the slide right here is just a kind of a quick brief of all of the activities that we do. We do a lot of suicide awareness, sexual assault awareness. Last year we actually made contact with our football team and asked if they would do a pledge during one of their home games. So the football team stood up during halftime and raised their helmets in pledge of not being a bystander and to support domestic violence issues within their community. And this was the first time that we've been able to really collaborate with our athletics department.
Great.
Yeah. And again, these are our peers, and we really wanted to be able to have a diverse peer students. So we went to the international students. We asked and encouraged them to come join us so they could speak to their peers. And as you can see on the slide, we have a diverse population there with our students. And they are responsible for doing all of the training in the classrooms. They have office hours. They see students, and they help with orientations as well. So getting that really diverse peer model was for us was really important because of the population that we have here on our campus.
Great. Well, Stephanie, it's clear that you've been a driving force for change on your campus, and I'm really curious to hear about the challenges, if there are challenges that you still face. But before we go there, I would love to hear from our audience about challenges that they've experienced. And I know I've been watching the text chat, and so there have been those conversations going on already about, gaining access, getting buy-in. But, we'd love to hear from you all. What challenges have you experienced on community college campuses? And as we wait for some of those to come through, like I said, Stephanie, the ones that I saw already were talking about buy-in and gaining access. Do any of those resonate with challenges that you've also experienced?
Absolutely. When we first got here, the campus, we were not part of the campus. I was out here on a grant, and they were fine with us doing a little bit of services. They really were resistant to any kind of prevention ed, and really did have the mindset of, because our campus, statistically speaking, we don't have issues on campus because of where we're located, and students come onto campus and then they leave. So really changing, that was our first run-in was with administration, getting them to understand that they have a responsibility. And we had to, and Jason talked about it a little bit, about unfortunately having to pull what I call the trump card and say, hey, this is a liability. I don't always want to have to pull the liability card, because the card should be, this is what we need to be doing to be creating a community on this campus and for our community. But that's the way it had to begin, was that conversation of bringing the administrators in our district to the table to fund some of this and to say, we do have a responsibility. And that was one of our biggest challenges. And again, the student buy-in. This is a commuter campus, getting students to understand that this is a community as well, right here on this campus. And that goes into the community even when you drive off of our campus, that you are still part of that community. And so working really closely with our student life and our other community partners was super important.
Yeah, and it sounds like, some of the challenges that you have listed here, Stephanie, are kind of being echoed in the text chat. So logistics and coordination, the fact that students on a community college often, are there for class and then are gone. And so how do you reach those students? How do you get buy-in? How do you get people to care about the issue? So yeah, it looks like, a lot of folks have the same challenges.
Yeah, we're not unique in that. I think that what might be helpful is that we had this grant that allowed to build some infrastructure first and foremost. And then that just came from really spending some time of going into people's office and introducing myself, introducing what we could do, how our office could be helpful in keeping students on campus, how we could be helpful in keeping students' retention rates. And so we began to just really kind of build relationships, and it was slow, and trying to share statistics. And then we began to have students that had been accessing services in our office that were willing to have conversations with other folks to say, this was my experience at Safe Place. This kept me in school. This allowed me to do better in school. And students coming forward and really bearing witness to their own experience with others.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for all of your insight. I really appreciate, you presenting on kind of how you got here and then what you did in terms of response, what the challenges are that you're still facing. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am going to now introduce our third and final guest. And so Val, I'm going to give you the podium. And so our third guest is Valara, or Val, Villanueva, who is part of a Rape Crisis Center Community College partnership. So Val actually works at Valley Crisis Center, a community-based organization, but she's working on a community college campus, Merced College, as the prevention specialist. And so Val, you have a really unique perspective being from a Rape Crisis Center, and also you serve multiple campuses through Merced College, excuse me. So I'm hoping that you'll walk us through what this looks like for you and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. First, I want to say I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. I really think that Jason and Stephanie had some amazing information that they provided, and even I'm taking notes while they're talking, just because this is so needed on our community colleges, and together we can all work to make a huge change and really bring prevention work and to start something new and positive in our communities. So yeah, I do work for Valley Crisis Center, and I am stationed at Merced College. So my role with Merced College is just to do prevention education. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what our school looks like. We do have our Merced College, which is the main campus, and then we have a satellite campus, which is the Los Baños campus. And Merced County is in the Central Valley of California, so we are pretty rural, and Los Baños especially is in a more rural area, and it serves the west side of our county, which has a lot of dairies, a lot of orchards. So the students who attend there are from smaller towns that usually ride the bus or drive over there, and then they stay there throughout the day. They stack their schedules, or they go there at night. And then our Merced College main campus is more inside of Merced City, so it's got more of the community accessibility to it. So like I said before, we have our main campus and our satellite campus, but we do have a pretty large campus. We have over 14,000 students enrolled, and 4,000 of those students are first generation. We also have a large population of international students. And then, again, we also have a huge population of full-time professors. So we have 171 full-time professors. So that's a great resource to have as well. So I'm going to begin my talk a little bit about the challenges that we faced as an agency coming onto a campus. And it's a campus that's been established for over 50 years. And coming out as an outside agency with this idea to a place where they, to community college, they say, this doesn't happen on our college. So part of the buy-in and part of getting them to accept the buy-in is explaining to them that, yeah, okay, maybe these things don't necessarily happen on your campus, but it happens to the students who attend your campus. And that's why this is important, because we do, as Stephanie said, have a responsibility to our students, and we have a responsibility to our community. And as a community college, that's the kind of responsibility we take on when we have our students attending. Other challenges that we have are the revolving staff. So in the admin department, over that time, we did have a lot of admin folks that would come and go, especially admin folks that we would try to build relationships with and really try to get them to be a champion of our work, and then they would start to work with us and then they were gone. So making sure that we found good relationships that we're going to be withstanding was another challenge. Finding space on campus. So this community college has a lot of different programs with very limited space. There's, so coming from an outside agency again and asking, okay, we want to be here, we want to provide this service to your students, we want to talk about prevention education, we want to have a peer educator program, but we need a hub. We need a place where they can easily come find us. And so getting that space was a challenge. Just making sure that they understand that this is needed. We can rent a room every once in a while, but to have one space all the time, 5 days a week, for them to come in and walk in and just, if they have questions, if they want, resources, to have that space available to them was a huge challenge as well, but we were able to get it done. And then really understanding and looking at how community college dynamics are compared to four-year campuses. Even though community colleges are different, considering we don't have resident life and Greek life, we also need to find ways to reach out to our student population. Our student population can be grandparents. They could be parents. I was a student at Merced College and I had children, and then some of my better friends that I made there were grandparents. So the dynamics there are a lot different. They're not your 18 to 24-year-old traditional student. But we also do have a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds that are just waiting to transfer. They're doing their 2 years there, and then they are going to transfer to for a year. And it could be for financial reasons that they're choosing to stay, but they're still a traditional student. So it's really understanding the different dynamics of working with the community college. However, although we have those different challenges, there's a lot of opportunities within the school. For example, we have, like we said before, 171 full-time staff. There are faculty and staff there that are very interested and very a part of social justice groups. So it's important to find the ones that want to make a difference on the campus. The ones that are supportive of social justice clubs, that are well liked by the students. For our campus in particular, we had a psychology professor, and a lot of students are really interested in psychology, so and it also is a mandatory class that they all have to take. So having this professor that everybody wanted to take, that was very interested in social justice, also be very supportive of our prevention program, was a huge asset to our work. And not only that, but she was also a part of what was called she was the advisor for the SAFE Club, and the SAFE Club is now the Gay Straight Alliance Club. So we were able to create relationships with different clubs just by having that relationship with that faculty person. Other opportunities that we see on campus is the students are eager to get involved. A lot of times we have this idea that they're just commuters. Some people have referred to them as transient students, meaning they come and go. They're just going to take a class. That is just, they're there to get their certificates. But there's a lot of students who really, really are invested in their campus. They really want the college experience. They really want to be a part of something bigger. And so it's just making sure that we recognize those students and give them the opportunity to make changes in their community. And especially because it is a community college and the students who attend there live there, they've lived there for a long time, and so they often are very invested in their community. They work there, they live there, and they plan on staying there, and they plan on working there. And so that is a huge opportunity with the students that do want to get involved in change and social justice on their campus. We had a great opportunity with our school as well to create a coalition. And within the school, we have our coalition where we found different key people on campus where we could all come together and discuss where does the agenda of the school and where does the agenda of prevention and Valley Crisis Center meet. So we were able to really pull that together, and we have a huge asset, which is the VP of Student Services. He's a champion for our program. He's very excited about what we have to say, what we want to do. When we have events on campus, he attends them. He's very outspoken and very supportive. We have fundraising events off campus. He's there. And so it's huge to have this coalition because together you guys can make these changes as a group, and people really value the fact when you listen to their opinion and you incorporate it into your work. The other opportunity we really like is that the people that work at the campus, a lot of them have strong ties within the community. So with that, I think it's important because when we get involved as an outside agency with staff and faculty on campus, it's creating a stronger relationship between not just the campus and the agency, but the people of the community and the programs they're involved with off campus as well. So it just really ties in our agency with many different things within the community off campus as well. And so, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to, thank you. You've made some really great points, and the challenges and opportunities and the thoughts that you've had on them, I think you're looking at it from like I said before, a unique perspective being from a rape crisis center. But you've been able to do a lot of really exciting things at Merced College, and so it looks like that's what you're about to share with us. And so I'm just excited to hear about what you have done.
Yeah, so I was getting a little excited and going through my PowerPoint fast. So that's part of because I'm a little nervous. But yeah, so one of the great things about our program is we do have a strong relationship with the prevention program at the university at UC Merced as well. So during times of like Domestic Violence Awareness Month or Sexual Assault Awareness Month, there's a lot of things that our campuses can do that mirror one another. So we're giving the same opportunities to not only UC Merced, but also Merced College and the Los Banos campus, which is 40 miles away, but they're still getting the same opportunities as well. So we've done, like I said before, for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we did the Clothesline Project, and we brought that to both the campuses, and we had a lot of student involvement with that. We were able to attend, as Merced College, the Pride Week and support the Lambda Alliance Pride Week at UC Merced, and we also had on our campuses Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and then we had our peer educator who is 18 years old. She was invited to accept a proclamation from the mayor of Los Banos for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, where the city recognized that month and really brought attention to the importance of recognizing teen dating violence awareness. We also showed, did like film screenings, so we did The Hunting Ground was one of our film screenings, and we actually had more staff attend than we did students. So that was a pretty interesting event as well. We do Prevention is Possible, so there was this really cool drawing that we got to give the students, and they got to do an art activity with that. But one of our most proud projects that we were working on is our media campaign. And so as you can see in our media campaign, these are actually posters that we put all over the campus, and the two people in the pictures are students from each one of the campuses. So on the right, he is a student at Merced College, the main campus, and on the left, she's a student at the Los Banos campus. And each picture was taken at each campus, and then we got them to describe a time where they could or did intervene. And so we talked about bystander intervention a lot. And so on the right, he talks about how he was able to get his friend out of a sketchy situation. And then on the left, she's talking about how she's changing culture by changing the way we talk and how we make light of serious situations. And so these media campaign posters are in health services, they're in the library, they're in the hallway, they're on our Facebook page, our Merced College Inspire Facebook page as well. And then we also created bookmarks. So our bookmarks, we place them in the libraries and we put them on our tables, and the bookmarks have ways to do bystander intervention, and then it also on the back has resources, because students have books, and if they need to have resources but they need to keep it discreet, they can stick it inside their book and nobody will know that they have that information. They'll have our crisis line, 24-hour line, hotline number, but to anybody else really looking at it, it's a bookmark. So we really used our students as examples, so they can actually, I've had people say, oh, I know that guy, I have a class with him, or I know her, or even, those people look so familiar, and that's because their faces are all over the campus.
They're like celebrities now.
Yes, definitely. Another program we started was our Inspire program. So once we got our office location, we really wanted to make a name for what we're doing. So we didn't want to just be Valley Crisis Center on Merced College campus. So we started Inspire, which is inviting students to promote prevention, intervention, and rape education. This program actually allows us to have two paid student workers. We have one from each campus, so we are not forgetting our smaller sister campus in Los Banos. And so we have two paid interns, and then we have the volunteer peer educator groups. And so they just come and they do tabling, or they share, Facebook posts, or they just, I had a gentleman that was a volunteer peer educator just talk to me about how he goes out in the community and he addresses rape culture at the bar. Because he had this training, and he's like, I never thought about it until I learned all this information. So he's incorporated it into his everyday life. And then as you can see in the middle, we have our Inspire office, and then we have signs all over the place. We're in the directory. in the directories that are in the elevators. That we are an actual program that can be found on campus. So that's really cool.
Great.
Yeah, so workshops with Student Success Center was a really awesome thing that we got to do this past semester. I was working in my office, and this lady who has been on campus for 20-something years, she asked me what I'm doing to find places to do my workshops. And I said, oh, I'm trying to find empty rooms that I can find and use and utilize. And she told me about Student Success, and the Student Success Center is a place where students who are involved in maybe extended opportunities programs where they have to attend workshops. It's a mandatory thing. They have to attend so many workshops per semester and get them signed off. Student Success is always looking for presenters. So I was then put in touch with Student Success, and I brought up topics that we could talk about, and we were then able and invited to present our information. And so they created these flyers. They have their own flyers that they make and such. But you can see we have our Inspire logo there, our Valley Crisis Center logo there, and so we were able to do 3 of those presentations and have students come, and maybe they were just there to check a box, but they actually took stuff away when they left. They have to do evaluations, and they talked about what they learned, and we really had a lot of student interaction during those events, especially the media literacy and gender equality one as well. So that was a really cool opportunity we had.
And Val, that's a really great example of finding an existing program to embed sexual assault and domestic violence prevention efforts into. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, definitely. And they told us that we were invited to come back again next year, so next academic year.
Wonderful.
Okay, so for policy, part of our coalition group is to discuss policies and see how we can make sure that they're updated and that we have the most effective policies for our students. And so some of the things that we're doing right now is we're presenting to the board responsible employee. Oftentimes students will share experiences with a professor who may not know how to handle it. Like it could be their bio professor that they're telling them, I'm experiencing domestic violence in the home, just because they really like that professor. And so what we really want to do is encourage our employees, our staff and faculty to be responsible employees, keep that trust, but do it in a way where they're also being responsible for the student. So instead of trying to counsel them, instead of trying to support them in a way that maybe they haven't had training on, their job would be to then say, I want to keep our relationship, in trust, but let me get you to a confidential resource. And so we're presenting this to the board where the staff and faculty will be expected to ask, or the staff and faculty will be expected to direct students to either Valley Crisis Center or myself or counseling for a confidential resource. That way we can support the student if maybe they need to go to Title IX or maybe they need to make a police report. But the appropriate people will be there to support them during that process. And so we are hoping to get responsible employee approved by the board this coming August. In doing so, we'll also have more staff and faculty response and reporting training. So we will do, we'll have a tabling where an opportunity for them to ask questions. So we'll do a training for them, and then we'll also allow them during their flex training that they have to, their mandatory training, where they can ask questions on how do I respond to this, or what would I do in these situations, and we can go over scenarios, and we can make sure that they feel comfortable in understanding what responsible employee is and what their duty is to the students. We also updated language in the policies, and then again we have like some classroom curriculum integration happening, especially with that one professor I talked about, our psychology professor. She incorporates bystander intervention, bystander effect in her psychology courses, and then she gives me a day in each of her classes to come in and just present my classroom work, and I get about 45 minutes just to do PowerPoint and then questions. And during that time, they're expected to take notes, and then later on, she puts my presentation information into the midterm. So they'll have all the stuff that they learned prior to me getting there, but then on the midterm, the stuff I talked about is included. So that not only do they hear it from me, but then they get tested on it, so they have to kind of remember what they learned as well. We've even had times where they got to write reflection papers on a time where they could have done some bystander intervention, and it doesn't have to be with domestic violence or sexual violence. It could be, you know, I saw somebody on the side of the road, and maybe I could have called CHP to help them. So instead of just driving by, this is how I could get involved and really be responsible for one another. And that's one of the takeaways I do is when I tell them about bystander intervention, I tell them it's not just, you know, being direct and getting involved in everything else. It's about being responsible for your fellow person and really having a sense of responsibility to one another. If I was broke down on the side of the road and I had no way to call somebody, I hope that somebody would call and get me some help. And so that's kind of what I hope they take away from, you know, helping one another, bystander intervention, getting involved. Another project that's my pet project that I'm excited about is our new website. So we really wanted to make it easy to navigate for the students. We tried to find some websites that were from community colleges, but there really wasn't a lot that had that was either easy to navigate or that really defined and explained, you know, what is domestic violence, what's a safety plan. You know, a lot of people don't talk about how to safety plan, so we made sure we incorporated safety planning. What is stalking? And then we also put on our website the prevention program. So Inspire has its own section on the website. So we are a campus program. So it's really cool to have that available to them. So when we do our classroom presentations, the students can then go back to the website, the Violence Prevention and Advocacy Resource website, and then they can see the information we give in our presentations, and then they can contact me directly. They can contact Valley Crisis Center. And so we really wanted to make sure that they have as many resources as possible. The other important thing that's on this website is Title IX. We included and made sure that they understood what Title IX means, because Title IX isn't just something that's on campus that doesn't, you know, that you hear about. It's their rights. It's their rights as students to have an educational environment that is positive and good. And so we really want them to understand that, you know, as their rights, they need to be able to find what Title IX means, who their Title IX coordinator is, and then if they are, you know, at some point a respondent in a case, who's their support person as a respondent as well. We also put on there links to the board policies for them to read over at any time. We also link to health services, counseling, and all kinds of programs, safety programs within the campus.
Wonderful. So Val, we are running out of time, but in the next 2 to 3 minutes, it would be wonderful.
Sorry.
It's okay. Let me go there. To hear about the coalition that you started.
Yeah. So, and I really want to say one thing about the policy stuff. Our website and all that information is going to be integrated into the syllabus. So every classroom gets a syllabus. Every student is going to have access to our website. It's integrated in there so that if they ever have a question, everybody has to go over their syllabus in class. That's going to be on there as well. And that was something that we came up in our coalition. So the coalition is really awesome. We have 15 key stakeholders, and it includes the police department, the VP of Student Services, health services, athletics, the athletics director, disabled students services. We have the dean from the Los Baños campus. We have professors there, and we have the UC Merced prevention program attend as well. And we really come together and collaborate about, you know, okay, what does the school need to do to be not just in compliance, but, you know, be the best campus, the safe campus, and and making sure that they are doing what they need to do for their school. And how can we as an agency of Valley Crisis Center, as an agency and as students and as a group as a whole come together and see where we can meet. So we're finding where our agendas meet. And it's really good because, we get input from one another. We know we have different contacts within the campus as well. So if I have an idea, they tell me, okay, you know who you need to contact? You need to contact X, Y, and Z, and that's how you're going to get it done. And so it's really an opportunity to have the school take responsibility for prevention and also create a relationship between our campus and our agency as well. And so we wrote out a purpose statement. We have our vision statement. We have goals. We have yearly goals that we come up with. And we really try to say, see where, okay, these are our goals. Now how are we going to get there? And last year one of our goals was the website. So we assigned different people from the coalition to take that website on. And then now we have it ready to go live.
That is so great. And Maya had a question, Val, about how did the coalition get started?
We really just told, so you find your champion on campus. For us it was our VP of Student Services. His name is Chris, and he's just, if you have an idea, if you have a plan, and you think, you show that it works for other schools. So for us, we have a really great model from the UC Merced campus, which Valley Crisis Center is a part of that model there. So if we can say, this type of thing works at this other campus, why can't it work here? There's no reason why it can't. So he says, yes, let's try it. And so it was really just finding him, finding that faculty person, Jeannie Clifford, and just really, she says, this is important. I will be there. Finding our health services. Would you want to be there? And, together, Chris and the prevention group, we sent out an email to who we thought was important, and then they responded, yes, I would really commit to this. And so it was just inviting them to be a part of it, and they did. They wanted to.
Great. Well, a lot of it does sound like relationship building, finding that ally, that champion, like you said, on campus. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us. I've learned so much from all three of our guests today, so thank you, Jason, Stephanie, and Val. I think, now more than ever, I really believe that community colleges have a lot to offer our broader field of prevention in terms of thinking about prevention creatively, the flexibility, the diversity that's needed, and it's absolutely crucial that we include community colleges in the broader discussion around campus sexual assault. So unfortunately, we are just about out of time. There's been so much wonderful discussion. Thank you. Like I said at the beginning, this is really just the beginning of the conversation. I think it would be wonderful for us to continue featuring some very specific content and web conferences on community colleges so we can keep this learning and sharing going. So thank you all again. I'm going to really quick, my last question was going to ask you, where could you integrate prevention programs into things that you already have going on campus? That's, I guess, a takeaway. I'm going to put in links right now to these two resources that might be of interest to folks. But thank you again. Joanna, you can head over to our website at preventconnect.org, and you will be able to get on the list through there. If anyone has questions, please feel free to email me. You will receive an email with a link to a copy of this recording when it's available in the next few days. But thanks again for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful remainder of your week. And thank you to all of our guests once again. This concludes our Prevent Connect Campus web conference today. Have a good one.